Hello everyone, and welcome to So Many Games So Little Time. Today we'll be doing a how to play and review of Seasons, one of my top 5 favorite games. I'm not even going to talk too much about it. I'm just going to say that we are all mages in a tournament trying to get as many prestige as possible by summoning familiars, summoning magic items, rolling amazing chunky dice, and summoning cards. So those familiars and magic items, and basically just trying to win and outsmart everybody else who's playing. Okay, I love this game, and I hope you will too. But first, let's see how we set up, then how we play, and then I'll tell you how I really feel. Okay, let's start by setting up the game. First of all, you have the manuals. I have the 2 expansions. I'll speak a little bit about them later, but for now, let's just set up the game. There's also still some PR stuff, apparently, that I still haven't thrown away. All right, let's put this to the side. And we have the 4 player boards. So everybody just chooses a color, of course. Let's just take 2 players now. Let's move the other 2 away. All right. This is the overview board, the seasons track basically, and then the score track. And next up is we have the dice. Now you'll see I have a lot of bags because I threw away the inserts because of a reason that I'll very shortly show you why. I'll show you why I threw it away. Here are the dice. Okay, so normally if you play with 4 players, you use all the dice, but the rule is you just use 1 extra die per player. So the amount of players plus 1, so we have 2 players, so it's 3 dice in this case, since we play with 2 players. But of course, if you play with 3, you would have 4 dice. If you play with 4, you would have 5 dice. Okay, all right, bring it here. These will all go away, and we will leave the dice tray nearby because we will use it later for rolling, because these are some seriously chunky dice. All right, well, I'll talk about this later. So, and then we put the tokens. This is the reason why I have an insert. These are Geek Bits from Board Game Geek store, the Board Game Geek store. They're a really nice upgrade. They're nice and thick, but downside is that they are too big for the insert. And also I have both expansions in the box, so you know, it just takes up too much space. But take out the insert and suddenly it is all very doable. All right, so put it around a bit for the aesthetics here as well. And there you go. Up. Now in a regular game, I might just leave these in the containers that you see here, but now I'm just gonna keep it like that. Okay. All right, and then next we of course have to give the players their colors. So 4 gray cubes for gray. So 1 of them will go on the 0 of the summoning track, 1 of them will go on the 0 of the bonus track, and then the other 2 will go on the score track, which, just to make it easier to see, I'll put here 1 on the 0 here and 1 on the 0 here. Do the same thing for lime. So 0 and 0, and then 0 and 0. There you go. That's where the cubes go. Don't forget the 2 black cubes. 1 of them goes on year 1, and the other one goes on the number 1 here. Then we still need 2 other things. We need a year 3 token and a year 2 token for every player. So here you go. And then a 3 and a 2. Here you go. as well. And then these tokens, they actually might come out depending on which card comes out. They basically just block one of your summoning gauges if necessary. All right. So I'll probably put these in a different box. But anyway. All right. So that is the setup actually, but we're missing one really big part, and that is of course the cards. So like I said, I have every expansion for the game. So this is a pile of cards, and this one is also a pile of cards. I'm only taking out one for the example. You shuffle the pile and then you will deal 9 cards to each player. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. There we go. Okay. And then you put the deck somewhere like here where everybody can easily reach it. All right. So every player has their player board, their 2 starter tokens, 9 cards, and then according to the manual, the youngest player starts. Okay. Now, first of all, whoever starts will get this token. Okay, so let's say the left player starts. Now we are not ready to begin the game yet, or maybe we are. Now the basic thing that you could do is everybody gets 9 cards and you play. That's it. Or you draft. That means everybody chooses, looks through their cards, you choose one, and then you pass the rest on to the next person. You choose one, pass it over again, you choose one, and you keep going until everyone has 9 cards again. All right. So that's the drafting phase. All right. So what else is important? After you've drafted, you have to decide which 3 cards you will start the game with. So let's say these are your cards. You look through them. You look at what they cost, when you think it's best to use them in the first, second, or third round, and then you basically divide them. So let's say these 3 cards, I think they'll be very good end game. Then you put them down and put the year 3 marker on top of it. Okay, done. If you think, these 3 will be better in year 2, you put the year 2 token on top of it, and done. Okay. And then when the game starts, you will start with these 3 cards in your hand. We'll do a full year, and then the other 2 will come out. Now, this is part of setup, all of it. But of course, this is also kind of already explanation of how the game works. So let's just move on to how the game specifically works, shall we? Okay, before I can explain anything, we need to know some basic terms of the game, so you know what I'm talking about. You can see a good example here on the card, the different words it says. For example, gain 2 energy tokens. Energy tokens are these. You have earth, you have water, you have wind, and you have fire. Okay, so these are the energy tokens. When it says gain an energy token and so on, that's what they're talking about. Next is gain 5 crystals. When you gain 5 crystals, you go up 5 spots on the crystal track. So basically you gain 5 points. You want to have as many points as possible by the end of the game. So basically crystals, points. All right. Then we have draw a power card, which means this is a power card. Okay. And to be more precise, this is a magic item. Magic items are purple, right? You also have one different type of card, which is this one. The orange ones are familiars. They tend to be creatures. Okay. Now, or they're always creatures. What else do we have? We have summoning gauge. Now the summoning gauge, you can see that on your player board. This goes from 0 to 15. Okay, so if you have 0, you can summon 0 cards. If you have 1, you can summon 1 card. And it also means you can only have 1 in your tableau, so 1 in front of you. Okay, so if you have 10, you can have 10 cards at one time in front of you. All right, so this can go all the way up to 15. So in a game, any given game, the maximum amount of cards you will have in front of you is 15. Then we have one more, and that is the transmute action. This is, by the way, this is also the icon of your summoning gauge. Okay, you can see the star. So this is transmute. Now the +1, you can ignore it. I'll go over the bonus actions later, but the circle means transmute. You can also see it on the dice. As you can see here, it's also transmutes. What is inside the dice inside the die doesn't matter in this case, okay? In the example, the circle means transmute. And what does transmute mean? That means that if you have certain energy icons, energy tokens on your board, you can decide to sell them for crystals, but more about that later, okay? So those are all the terms that you need to know in the game. Now let's go over the cards. There are 3 different cards, well actually 4 different cards, and let's see what they do, okay? Now we have 4 different symbols. You can see in the bottom here, you can see this one, and you can see that one. So we have it looks almost like a heart, but it's not. Then you have the circle, arrow, and then we have the gear, and then this one is something specific, okay? Now, for example, this one with the arrow that goes down, that looks a bit like a heart. That means when you play the card, the effect will happen once and immediately, and it'll be over. The card will stay. Every card has a name, obviously, and also has a value in the top left corner. Those are the amount of crystals you get at the end of the game. This is the cost. So to play this card, you need 2 water tokens, water energy tokens. And then you see what it does. In this case, gain 4 energy tokens of anything, right? You can choose and place them on the amulet of water. You can use these tokens during the game, okay? So this gives you more tokens, all right? So if you want to play these, you pay the cost, you put it down, you put the 4 energy tokens on, and then it's done for the rest of the game. Okay, you can take them off, but it's no other actions have to be taken. Then you have the Purse of Io. It costs 1 fire, 1 wind, also 6 points at the end of the game. Gain 1 extra crystal for each energy token you transmute. So transmute, remember, is selling energy tokens for crystals. So this does +1 every time you sell one. And the continuous arrow, the circle one, means that this effect will last until the end of the game, or until this card is discarded or sacrificed or whatever, okay? So the arrow icon, the circle, means that this one will have an effect for the rest of the game. Then we have this one, which has a gear, potion of power, 0 crystals, but that means he does something interesting probably, or it does something interesting. You have 2 fires, sorry, you have 2 fires, and then you can sacrifice the potion of power. Sacrifice means it goes to the discard pile, it's gone, okay? Sacrifice the potion of power, draw 1 power card, and increase your summoning gauge by 2. So the card disappears, but you get to draw a new card and increase your summoning gauge by 2, okay? So this is also another one, the gear. Sometimes you have cards with the gear that don't say sacrifice, which means you can use them every round. Also, when you play the card, you can immediately use the gauge if you want to, okay? You don't have to wait and start the gauge, the gear. You don't have to wait until the next round to use it. It can be used instantly. And then we hear the Thieving Fairies, a familiar, right? Orange. You can see they're living beings, right? Creatures. And here it's very special because it depends with how many people you're playing. And then the cost next to it is, in this case, crystals. So basically you're paying points, you're paying crystals to place these. But then it's very powerful because it says each time an opponent activates a card, one of their power cards, power on their power cards, the gear, they give you 1 crystal and you get an extra crystal on top of that. So basically gets you 2 points every time someone activates a power card. okay? So it uses the gear. Now, this has points next to it, but it could also just be energy tokens, okay, as a cost. This example just has these. Okay, so these are like different type of cards that you can encounter, but there are many different cards. Just for an example, I'll use these other three. Now, I should also mention the cards that I've now shown, these four, they are all in the base game, right? But then here are some from the expansion. Yeah, there's only one from the expansion apparently. This is also base game. In this case, you get to decide how much you pay for it. And the more, if you pay everything, all four of the energies, you can do all four actions. It's very powerful. Or if you just pay one, you just do one action, depending what it corresponds to, and 2 points. And then here, 0, but you gain 10 crystals, and then every round you can activate it and get 1 crystal for each of the familiars in play. Or your familiars. So very powerful as well. The Amulet of Time is from an expansion. It says 15 of 20. And it says collect 2 energy tokens, and then you can discard X power cards and draw X power cards. So you choose how many you discard, and then the same amount you draw, and 9 points. So there are many cards in the game. Okay, so how do you pay for these cards? How do you get your energy tokens and so on? Well, the beginning of the turn, the first player, at this moment, you can see here, I'll move it a little bit closer so you can see it better. So as you can see here, we start of the game, we start here in the cube, right? So the first player will take the 3 dice corresponding to the season. So in this case, winter, right? You take these 3 and you will roll them. So let's say I roll. I'll take the dice tray. Up. All right, this is my roll, and then I put it down here. I put it anywhere, but I just have limited amount of space here, so I'll just put it here. All right, for now. So these are the options. Okay, so the first player, then chooses a die. They will do what it says, or maybe not, depending on which cards they have. They might not have to, but you choose a die, right? And then you do your actions, whatever you want to do. And then as the next player, they will choose another die, and then 1 die will remain. Now let's see what can be on these dice, for example. If you see like this, 2 here means you get 2 crystals, so 2 points, and 2 water energy tokens, okay? This means the star, you increase your summoning gauge. So you go from 0 to 1 in this case. So in case you have forgotten, this is the summoning gauge. You go from 0 to 1 now, which allows you to summon 1 card. You get a wind token, and if you want, you can sell tokens for crystals. Now is a good time to explain transmuting, because that's what it does. In this case, let's say you got the wind token, right? You take the wind token, and you say, I'm going to sell it. Then you look here. We are now in winter. So wind and water, they are worth 1 crystal. So if I transmute this one, I will get 1 crystal. Now, if I had a earth token, then this would have given me 3 crystals if I sold it. And if I had a fire one, it would have given me 2 crystals if I sold it. You can sell as many as you want, up to a maximum of 7, or if you have the cauldron, no, it's not a cauldron. If you have a certain card, then you can go up to 10 even. So it can be a big source of points, but of course when you sell them, they're gone. But you do get crystals for them. So that's transmuting. Okay, let's continue. This one just gives you 6 crystals. All right. This one gives you increase your summoning gauge by 1 and 1 fire. This one gives you 2 water and increase your summoning gauge by 1, summoning gauge by 1 and wind, and then water and wind, and then summoning gauge and fire. So all these dice have different variations of what I've just shown you. Okay, 3 points, 2 water, and so on. Now you've also noticed there's some pips at the bottom. Like this has 1 pip at the bottom. You have the number 6 here has 2 pips on the bottom. And then this one here has 3 pips on the bottom. Well, let's say player 1 and 2 have chosen these dice. Okay, we always put it in here, but it's not necessary, okay? Because this is actually for an expansion, but you know, it's nice like this, right? So let's say this one's also gone. This one remains. The 3 pips on the die, they decide how far this will move. So we have 3, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, so if you want the game to go faster, you will try to make sure the dice with 3 pips are the ones remaining. If you want the game to go slower, you want, of course, one with only 1 pip, because then the cube would have only gone 1 step. Okay, so let's say it was 3 now, okay, and both people have done all their actions. Then the next round, the first player token would go to the next player, up, 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 up. And then that player would now roll the 3 green dice, because we are now here in spring, okay? So then that would happen. And then the cube will keep going around until we finish out the year, okay? So let's go back to here and say what you can do with what actually happens in your turn, all right? So let's say is this person. They take this die, they increase their summoning gauge by 1, and then they will take 1 wind token, all right? So, and they will place it somewhere above here on their board, okay? That's what it will look like. And then on your turn, you can summon a card if you choose to do so, and do whatever the effects it has, okay? Now, you see in the middle here, I've explained everything now here, but not in the middle. You have 1, 2, 3. So remember that you start the game with 3 cards in your hand, and then 3 cards underneath year 2, and 3 cards underneath year 3. So dun, 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 here they are, year 2 and year 3. So let's say I started with these 3 cards, okay? Now, I use these cards throughout year 1. So a turn happens, blah, blah, blah. Let's say I played this card, I put it in front of me, it goes forward, I play another one, and we go all the way around to 12, right? And then once we, let's say it's 11, and the die that remains is 3 pips, we cross the line, okay? Then, before the next turn starts, everybody will pick up, because we go to year 2, everybody will pick up their year 2 cards and add them to their hand, okay? So you can look at these cards, year 2 and year 3, at any time you want. So you can basically prepare during year 1 to make sure you have the costs that you need. You have the energy tokens that you need to pay the cost of the cards for the next round, okay? All right. So what is your board going to look like in front of you as you're playing? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so this is the gray player, as you can see. So let's say on their first turn, they have taken this, okay? They increase their summoning gauge by 1. They get 2 water. They put their water here, right? And then they take a look at the cards that they have in their hand, and look, they happen to have an amulet of water. Their summoning gauge is 1. They can play 1 card. They can't afford the other 2. So they play amulet of water. They can choose 4 energy, but then looking at the cards that come up, they might say, I want 3 fire and 1 wind. Okay, so first of all, they pay for their card, obviously. So they get 3 fire. There we go. And 1 wind. Dun, dun, dun. Done. Their turn is over now. On to the next person. Okay, so they will take another die. The other die will then decide how far we move forward. Let's say we ended up in the green, and then we come up here. Now, sadly for this player, there's no summoning gauge. They do get earth and water. Okay, so they have that to add, but they're at 0, so they cannot play another card. Now, there is a way to play another card, and that is with the bonus actions. Okay, so the 4 actions are, the first one means you take 2 energy tokens, you throw them away, and you exchange them with 2 other energy tokens. So for example, I remove my fire, 2 fires to get 1 wind and 1 earth. There you go. that's done. But because you've used a bonus action, you will move one step here. So it's going to cost you -5 at the end of the game, okay? Let's say I want to transmute, and even though, let's say I have this one, right? So this die does not allow me to transmute. If I use this bonus action, I can transmute, plus everything is +1, which basically means that if you look at this, instead of getting 1, you would get 2, 3, 4, okay? Thanks to this, because you basically sell it for higher. But once again, you'd go up, of course, in this case, -12. Now, if you only do one bonus action, you just do this one, obviously is -5, okay? They all have the same cost. Whenever you use them, you go up. So technically, you could use the same action 3 times in the game. 1, 2, 3, and then you have to stop. Third action means increasing your summoning gauge. So if this had been the situation, right, that I was talking about, you could say I do this, go to -5, increase summoning gauge by 1, and now suddenly I can play one of my 2 cards and I can keep going. Of course, you want to make sure that whatever you're playing will hopefully end up getting you more value than the -5 you just gave yourself. The last one is very straightforward as well. You go, of course, from 0 to -5. You draw 2 cards from the deck. Up. You look at them and you choose one. Okay? Choose one in your hand. There it goes. The other one is discarded. All right? I should also mention that the cards in your hand are always secret, okay? You don't show them to anybody. But these are the bonus actions. So you might have a complete game where you never use them. You might have a game where you've used all of them. There are also cards in the deck. I think one, a certain throne of something. I forgot about it. Throne of Renewal, that's the name. That allows you to discard one of your cards and go back a spot. If you feel like you've been spending too much, there's always, if you're lucky, ways to reduce it again. Okay, so that is basically everything that you need to know here. On your board, there's one more detail I haven't mentioned yet, is you can only have a maximum of 7 energy tokens. Okay, it says here max. If you would ever go over it, let's say you took the dice now and you get an earth and a water, okay, and of course you have too many, you have 9. So you immediately have to make a choice which ones you keep and which 2 you discard. So you might say, I don't really want these fires. They can go, these can stay, or maybe you want to keep 1 fire and you don't really want this one, and then these 2 go away. Okay, so there's the maximum of that as well. So when does the game end? Very easy. I'm not going to change the camera for this. I will just put it on top of it. Very simple. The game will end once we're at level 1, we're year 1, sorry, go all the way around. Go to year 2, go all the way around, go to year 3, and then all the way around. And if we then cross the finish line, the game will end, and that is it. Then you will count the points on your card and add them to the crystal track. You know, they're all crystals, they're not really points. You will add up all the points, and then you will see who wins. And that is how you play Seasons. Okay, 2 things that I have failed to mention. That is, at the end of the game, when you're adding the points of all the cards and end of game scoring, you also have the minus points that you have to subtract. And also for every card that is still in your hand, every card is -5 points at the end of the game. Okay. One more thing as well. For example, if you have this card, the Idol of the Familiar, it has a gear. So normally on your turn, when you activate the gear, you should put it sideways so you remember that you've already activated it. Now, I have to say, in our place, we never do that because we tend to not have that many cards to activate anyway, so we always remember. But then, you know, maybe in your game when you play it might be different. So that is what it says in the rule book. I just want to specify that. And then finally, one last thing. According to the rule book, this is not wind, this is air. So FYI. All right. Okay. So I think that now covers everything, and we can continue to how I feel about the game. All right, let's go. Okay, so that was Seasons. I love this game. I really love this game. Reason number one, the art is amazing. It is so beautiful. There's so many cards, especially when you get both expansions, which especially in the beginning you don't have to, but in games like this more is always better, right? So I really love this game. It is awesome. It is so beautiful. The dice, they're really heavy. They're super chunky. I love rolling them only on a dice tray because you get really loud if it's not on a dice tray, just so you know. Okay. Every game is different because technically you only get to see 9 cards per person. Of course you can always draw, but there's never that many cards, so it's kind of limited in that way, but I don't mind because you have ways to draw more cards, just not too many. And you have to find the combination. The drafting is super important. Games can swing with which cards come out. It's important to decide which card comes out when. Yeah, the comboing is really satisfying as well. We have a playthrough, all right? Kine and I did a playthrough. Check it out because there are some combos there that can be really backbreaking for the other person. But no spoilers anyway. Check it out, especially if some parts of the how to play were not clear. Be sure to check out the playthrough and then it will all make sense. Okay. But yeah, this one, it has everything I want. It has deck building. It has comboing. It is beautiful. It is satisfying to play. It has a lot of replayability. It's different every time. Yeah, that's just all I have to say about this. I don't have any negatives about this game. I really don't. I guess that's why it's in my top 5 as well. Yeah, the huge variety is key, and I did upgrade it a little bit, but you don't even need this. You really don't. The tokens themselves are good enough, but I did it anyway because yeah, it'll keep longer, I guess. And it's shinier, looks a bit better, but that's it. But anyway, Seasons, I absolutely love it. If you like it as well, if it seems interesting, give it a shot. Try it out. I highly recommend this, including both expansions, which I will talk about now. Well, after I get them. The first expansion is Path of Destiny, and Path of Destiny adds something that is not in the playthrough. It adds the Destiny die. Okay, this is a Destiny die. So basically, you can decide to roll this when it's not your turn. Well, sorry, you can decide to roll this instead of using the regular die. You still have to choose a die, but you roll this one. And what does it do exactly? It has these half moons. You get these points, right? And whoever has the most half moons at the end of the game, like for example 5 or 10 or whatever, or 2 or 3, if you have the most, you get 20 points. If there's a tie, then all the players get 10 points who tied. So basically, you're kind of like forcing other people to give up their turn by rolling the die. The die can also give you some energy tokens or some crystals, but in general, it's better to have a regular turn. But then if you win the 20 points, it can be a huge swing. Sometimes we play with it, sometimes we don't. The expansion also has a number of cards that change the rule of the game, like an event card. In this game, only this happens. In this game, only that happens. I don't play with it. I guess you could play with it just to have some variety or to experience Seasons in a completely different way, but I've never felt the need to. It has a bunch of new cards as well, which is always good, of course. And also it has, just like the other expansion, it has these tokens. You put these in your player board at the start of the game, okay? And then when you perform the action, you flip it over and then you get whatever it says at the end of the game. So it gives you 3 points in the game, and you also have an action and the actions are explained in the rule books. Once again, most of the time we don't play with it because we don't really feel it's needed, and I don't think it's really balanced as well. Some can give you like plus 18 points, some will give you minus 5 points. So it's like we're not really crazy about that. Same thing with the next one, Enchanted Kingdom. We just play it because of the extra cards, you know, more cards. You have more of these tokens, you know, and this actually came with the first player marker that you saw because there wasn't one like that in the original game. And yeah, just more cards, okay? More cards, more cards, more cards. And that's the most important thing, is to always add the cards. So those are the expansions basically. I only went over quickly because we only use the cards and maybe sometimes the Destiny die, and that's it. We don't use the game changing ones. Or maybe we will do a couple and do a playthrough. That might be interesting. But then I guess you'll know now if it's already here or not, right? Because it's time stamped. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, that's it. That was Seasons. That was me. So many games for little time. You like it? Then press the like button, subscribe, follow, leave a comment, whatever you want. Okay? See you next time. Bye-bye.